Remember ye olde Xbox 360? Remember the last time Microsoft was truly dominant in a console generation? Though Microsoft did ultimately manage to sell fewer 360s than PS3s, so sort of a W with an asterisk. If you do, the good news is in. The old boy Xbox 360 is an excellent pickup today. For a long time, an Xbox 360 was a dubious investment. The biggest reason not to buy an Xbox for a long time was that there was a really good chance your console would outright die, and you'd have to, best case scenario, send it away for a while to be repaired. Once the red ring of death issues were solved though, the Xbox 360 became more attractive to consumers and began to age like fine wine. Today, we're going to talk about all the reasons why you should pick up an Xbox 360 today. So strap in and let's get into it. Way back in 2005, which is a shocking 16 years ago, the Xbox 360 launched at $299 for the core system without a hard drive. Today, you can find these things online for a fraction of the price, and you'll be buying newer models with lots of storage, as well as often bundled with games and accessories. If you head on over to eBay and do even a casual search, you'll see recently closed auctions selling 360 consoles, Kinects, and games into the double digits sell for $100 with shipping. Because of how many 360s are out there, the market is pretty saturated. So whether you want a specific edition for modding or a limited edition for the aesthetic, or simply a refurbished console direct from Microsoft, you can find essentially whatever you want on eBay or whatever retailer of your choice without too much hassle or trouble. This extends to 360 games and peripherals too. Games for the 360 are particularly cheap, often selling for as low as $5 per game depending on the title and its condition. This is even more attractive if you plan on modding your console or buying a modded console where you can rip your games from their discs and store them on your hard drive, not needing to use a worn-down disc. There are many games available on Xbox 360, and there are many awesome exclusives too. Looking back though, many of the 360 exclusives eventually left Xbox 360 or became better played by backwards compatibility on later Xboxes. A system seller like Halo 3 today is definitely not best played on its original platform, where the resolution and FPS are comparatively low. While there might not be a ton of exclusives to make the system a must-have today, if you don't have a PC, there's an entire generation of multi-platform games out there available on the 360. What's more is that even if these games did come to PC, this gaming generation was plagued by awful PC ports, and sometimes the PC just never got a release at all. Games were better played on 360 over PS3 too. So there are instances where a console-only game is best played on 360 to this day, if it hasn't managed to get updated to include backwards compatibility or get some kind of later-in-life port. Lastly, if you are simply too young to have enjoyed this generation of video games and are mostly a console player, chances are you haven't played most of these games, and there are many hits worth checking out. Depending on which kind of Xbox 360 you pick up and what kind of firmware it's running, you'll have access to a number of different ways to exploit or modify your console. Also, you can choose to simply buy a pre-modded console with homebrew installed / whatever mods you want already configured and set up. This is pretty viable given how cheap 360s are online and how easy the console can be to hack. Modding a 360 console allows you to do all kinds of extraordinarily useful stuff, like ripping your games to store on a hard drive, giving you the option of modifying games or save files, allowing you to download and install emulators and play older games, as well as open up your console to more multimedia applications. Particularly with emulation, the 360's game library can be massively expanded to include many games from previous eras of gaming. And if you're young enough to have missed the Xbox 360, then you'll have many more generations of games you can check out on the 360 you probably haven't played before too. Modding a 360 is one of the best ways to extend its usefulness and add features onto what is now a cheap way to play a lot of great video games in HD. If a game exists on both PS3 and Xbox 360, chances are the better version is the 360 version, and oftentimes the gulf between the versions can be pretty large. This is due to the fact that the PS3 was a much more powerful game console than the Xbox 360, only if its unique hardware configuration was properly taken advantage of by clever, complicated programming. For many years, developers for the PS3 struggled to take advantage of its hardware because of the difficulty therein. Eventually, developers got better at dealing with the PS3's layout and games ran better, but many games simply weren't given enough time in development on PS3. With the lead console platform of a game often being the Xbox 360, it was a routine experience for PS3 users to get the short end of the stick and usually, at least, a slightly worse experience than the Xbox counterpart. This all goes to say that the Xbox 360 is a great choice, especially if you intend to actually play games of its generation on it, because you won't be stuck with what is commonly looked back on as the technically inferior version. The Xbox 360/PS3 generation of video game consoles are the oldest consoles out today that can still feel relatively modern and contemporary, meaning that playing games on them you've never played before won't feel like retro gaming. This is due in no small part to Nintendo, courtesy of the Nintendo Switch. The Nintendo Switch is about as powerful as the 360 or a PS3, except you can carry it around with you anywhere. In terms of resolution, fidelity, and frame rates, the Switch is remarkably similar to an Xbox 360 or a PS3. And because of this, the way games look and feel on Switch is often a good analog for how games look and feel on 360. This means that these styles of play and these kinds of game performance aren't too unusual in the modern day. So while a 360 game might look dated, it will definitely hold up to modern scrutiny. As games get more complicated and better looking, how good a deal the 360 is will matter less when so much more is possible on more powerful devices. This means that right now is one of the best times to get a 360, since the prices are low and the games are not even retro yet. The 360 is a great choice for multi-plats of that console generation, but exclusives on PS3 are unrivaled, making the PS3 a great console to pick up today too. The PS4 and One generation is best played on PS5/Series X, but older consoles are still a great buy.